Oh, we've got a technical problem. Oh, there we go. We're in. That was a good start to the show.
Good evening, Jonathan.
Hello, Chris. How are you? It's a long time no see.
Yeah. Like how many hours?
Probably about 5 or 6. We will explain to everybody that Chris and I were out and about today. We were at North Somerset Council, weren't we, Chris?
Yes, we were. We went to the inquiry into use of Roundup around the district and what the council can do. I mean, I came away from that morning quite enlightened and very surprised. And I think, as you probably got from my opening remarks to everybody there, was, haven't we come a long way?
I think what was encouraging, Chris, was that everybody was working together and everybody was listening. And I think that was the encouraging thing, is that there was nobody there really taking a dogmatic stance. Is that, it was very evidence-based, which I found really quite refreshing. So
definitely,
fingers crossed. We'll have to wait and see how that one pans out, really. But yeah, it was very encouraging.
Definitely.
Yeah. Shall we? We'll feed into that, because this kind of reflects what we're going to talk about tonight, and that is what the use of weed killers like glyphosate can do to wildlife and the harmful effects that it can have. But we will kick off tonight with, we're at that time of the year, aren't we, Chris?
Yes, it's all happening. There's a picture I took of a rook. He hasn't quite shaped that stick yet, Jonathan. He needs to shape it before he gets it home to his mate.
Yeah.
But as no doubt people have noticed with the local rooks, it's all go. They're building like crazy. I've received a local picture as well of somebody that's got a tawny owl in a nesting box with a camera in, and she's on eggs. So there we go. They're well away. This is from my garden. This is a great tit, and it's inside my box. Obviously, there's a camera. You can see the date and time splashed across there. So we keep an eye on them in a very scientific way. But it's a great tit prospecting, and the great tit comes every day at the moment to prospect, and quite often brings the mate with him. But if you go to the next picture, this is a blue tit, and again, this is great, because in our garden we thought we'd lost our blue tits completely. So this is where the camera can be a massive bonus, if you like, because it's giving us information or giving us data that we didn't know. So this is where cameras are obviously absolutely superior. And there's not much time difference between the great tit and the blue tit, and there's going to be a bit of a kerfuffle, because of course, one will want to nest there, or one species will want to nest there, the other species will want to nest there, and it'll be the strongest, biggest one that actually wins. So don't bother taking bets, Ladbrokes, because it'll be the great tit that wins. I'll have to eat something if the blue tit wins, and I can't think of anything at the moment.
Just on a kind of like a separate thing, is I had a meeting with Portishead Town Council on Monday, and we were at Slade Road Field doing a recce with a chap in Glendale, and just trying to work out what can be done in the short term to improve access to the field without being too destructive, and to prove the point about timing. Is whilst we were down there was this dunnock in the distance that was collecting nesting material. So yes, we've had a discussion with, like I say, with Portishead Town Council and Glendale, and there's some areas around the gate and the steps of which they're fairly open, and you can clearly see there's nothing in there. So my advice has been to deal with those then we've got the whole breeding season to work out what can be done with the the field for the long term. Anyway, that's a separate thing.
Whilst you're on dunnocks, let's just stop, because whilst you're on dunnocks, what a fascinating bird that is. Because of course what they will do is the males will and the females they can actually build separate nests, and what you'll quite often get is a female. And this can happen with males as well, so don't get the wrong idea here. But basically, what can happen is that a male basically sings. So you have a beautiful male there. He'll be singing. He'll be collecting food. He'll be building, and he attracts a female in. And she basically susses him out completely. How strong is he? What's the food value that he can bring in? What's his nest construction like? And she may decide to mate with him, but go off and lay eggs in a neighboring territory. So they can do that, but they can do that in reverse. So the whole thing can happen in reverse. So the male may be off siring several females, and the female may be off round many different territories. So they have an incredibly interesting, shall we say, lifestyle at this time of the year. But a bird which has actually been on decline for some time. And if you have a look at that beak, if you want to go back to that picture, just have a quick look at that beak. That's an insectivore. So that's collecting insects, that lovely thin beak there. So go back again. That's brilliant. Thank you. That's an insect feeder. So obviously what we've seen in this country is the demise of insects, and not just here as well, because 5 years ago when I was in France, at the same time the French government were announcing the insect apocalypse taking place. And very interesting there in France, what they were doing was not allowing the sale of Roundup or any other chemicals in people's gardens. So you could still do it on farms, but you couldn't do it in gardens anymore, to try and get the insect numbers back up again. So for a species like the dunnock, that's really, really important. Now, when I was growing up in Portishead, obviously I used to come out from my parents' house, and I could be able to hear during April and May cuckoos calling, really close to the urban area of the town, and they would have been reliant on parasiting dunnocks. The dunnock has declined. There's less opportunity for species like cuckoo. If you want to go and find some really good numbers of cuckoos, you need to find, and I say locally, I mean go to Chew or Brown Blagdon or down on the Somerset levels. Those are parasiting reed warblers. If you go up to the Great Glens in Scotland, you can actually drive through the Great Glens, stop, get out, and you'll always hear cuckoos at the right time of the year. They're absolutely everywhere. What are they parasiting? Well, they're after meadow pipits, so completely different. But round here on the pastoral farmlands and on the urban fringes, they were needing dunnocks, and we don't have them in the number that we used to. So absolutely critical that we let them have a really good breeding season. We let them produce enough young that they can hold their numbers up or even increase. So if we destroy their hedges now, we've ruined completely the breeding season. We're not talking about a very long-lived bird. So if there's nothing to replace the adults, the population just nosedives.
I'm glad you mentioned hedgerow, because of course the dunnock's other nickname, it's known as the hedge sparrow. Correct. And I think a lot of people may kind of not realize they've got dunnocks in their gardens, or they've got or they've got house sparrows, that they can be easily confused with female house sparrows. But when you see them close up, and this is a photograph I took in my back garden, you can see that the female house sparrow, or indeed house sparrows in general, they have what is known as a stout cone-shaped beak, which is used to crack open seeds and nuts, and it's a powerful beak. Finches have very similar beaks, whereas the dunnock, because it's more of an insectivore of a bird, very similar to the robin, and in fact, in terms of size, they're of a similar ilk. And if you see a dunnock and a house sparrow side by side, you see that a dunnock is considerably smaller than the house sparrow. But it does. I was reading some stuff today about, because the robin and the dunnock are similarly sized birds, it may feed into why they can be so aggressive to each other. Well, why robins can be so aggressive towards dunnocks. So there we go, folks. You may have both birds in your garden, but if you get the opportunity, have a look at the beaks. And if it's a robin-shaped beak, chances are you've got a dunnock. And fabulous birds, fabulous song on them. But Chris,
did you know, Jonathan, that it's not actually that long ago that people thought the dunnock was the female robin?
Really?
Mm.
I can see that, because it's and not only that, but when you see juvenile robins, because they don't have the colouring, they can be these dirty little kind of like, dark coloured birds that can look like dunnocks. So right, weed killer, Chris. We were lucky enough to.
I don't want to kill weeds, mate. I don't want to kill weeds.
Well, we attended the meeting at North Somerset Council today. We were kindly invited to go along, and you spoke. What's the story, Chris? Well, why do we need weeds?
Why do we need weeds? Well, I suppose you could be completely. You could say, we don't need weeds. We could do away with them completely. But the problem is that you only have to have a look at the countryside surrounding an urban area like Portishead, and there isn't much area for these so-called weeds. And let's be honest, they're wildflowers, just in the wrong place, to actually grow. So anywhere where they can get a foothold, they're going to spring up and get going. In terms of the fact of spraying chemicals, I thought there was some really good deliveries this morning on looking for alternatives. You can go back one, because I'll need to talk about that plant. I thought there were some really good alternatives put forward, and I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a mix match, but a complete reduction in the amount of chemicals that we actually put out there into our, let's face it, what is a human environment. So if we're spraying, and those chemicals are known to not just affect the plants, not just affect the insects on the plants, but also affect us, and Houston, we have a problem. And so reducing dramatically the need for using them is obviously a really good way forward. But obviously, some people do not like to see anything growing within an urban area. They want it completely cleansed. So, and they will normally be quite loud when they talk to councillors, and they will say that the place looks totally untidy, when actually you see a plant like this growing up in an urban area and you think, wow, this is really interesting. Basically, because it's not the monotony of the color of the tarmac or the concrete jungle that you're in. You've actually got something to break up what you're actually looking at. And I know it's a well-known fact that the human being, if you like, feeling relaxed, is geared to see, I think it's the color blue and green. So yeah, there you have the sea, and there you have plants. And so I often feel completely different when I'm walking in an urban area and I see some plants growing out. It makes me think, well, it makes me think two things. And here comes nature fighting back. But at the other hand, it makes me quite relaxed to think that there is an environment, there is space left for nature. And that was one of the things I was saying today. Do we want no nature in our urban area? Do we want it completely cleansed? And I don't think the vast majority of the people do, especially when you look at a plant like this. So this is evening primrose, and evening primrose normally grows up in waste ground, or it can grow up on the edge of paths from verges. So this is the type of thing that you're likely to encounter. And this has great medicinal properties as well. You can actually go down to one of our. Am I allowed to mention names of companies?
Yeah, of course you can.
All right. So if you could go down to Boots, there are other chemists. You could pick up evening primrose as a vitamin. You can pick it up as a supplement. Well, here it is. There it is growing, and just behind it there is another plant which you can also pick up, and that's St. John's wort. So they are two things which we know medically can help us. And yes, you want to go on now, Jonathan? That's great.
Well, I was just going to say, Chris, you talking about evening primrose. When I had my what we euphemistically call vacation last year, when I came back, one of the things that absolutely astounded me on the patio was all this evening primrose that had, I don't know where it had come from, but oh my goodness me. And I've collected all the seeds from it. And I was very lucky. My friend Jackie, who came around to do some gardening for me whilst I was convalescing, one of the things I said to her was, "Don't touch the evening primrose." And you can see in that photograph where she'd very cleverly cleared a lot of the kind of like the brambles around the other side. But this lasted well into the autumn. And I've still got the stalks are still outside, and and I've been collecting the seeds from them. But it's absolutely fabulous plant for pollinators as well. And also when you just look out the kitchen window and you see these beautiful yellow flowers kind of swaying in the breeze.
Put a smile on your face, mate. Put a smile on your face.
Smile on your face, yeah. But the next picture is one you've taken down near. I'll mention them by name. Aldi, opposite Aldi, isn't it? It's by Worthington Walk.
That's correct, and it's actually and this was the interesting thing from today. So if we were to stop doing weeds completely, then in essence, what some of these plants can do is actually break up the tarmac and break up the concrete. And it looks like that's what's going on here, but it's not. They're growing out of the gaps left by whoever did this work in the first place. So they've found a space and they've gone in. This is Oxford ragwort. So not common ragwort. This is Oxford ragwort, which flowers a lot earlier and therefore is far more beneficial to insects of late spring and summer. And obviously there's no farmland surrounding this, so they're not going to have an effect on that. And there is some debate taking place right now actually around the country about the benefits of ragwort versus the poisoning of animals because of ragwort. So that's a debate actually taking place. But this is not common ragwort. This is Oxford ragwort, much smaller. And this, you're right, it's growing just opposite Aldi. It's not there at the moment. You won't be able to see it, but it will be up soon. And so, what you can do is you could let this flower, let this have its time, and then you could go around and you could literally pull that up by the roots and it would come. You wouldn't need to spot spray that, because one of the things that was said today is that if you trowel plants, then you haven't got the roots. They're just going to come back. But with this one, because the gap from the original building that took place is so big, you could just put your hand down and pull the whole plant up. The whole thing's going to come up.
Yeah, it's something. Just going to say, it's something I've noticed in my garden is that where I've got the steps that lead down to the down to the far end, is occasionally I'll get build-ups of dirt in the gap, in like the corners of the steps and whatever. And it's amazing how many plants can actually take root in literally a few millimeters of soil. Of course, they never do it when I'm actually planting them in pots, but no, it's, and like you say, is that the roots for these will literally be on the surface. It's really quite, it's remarkable how hardy and how resourceful these plants are, that they can find a way to thrive and survive, but in the most minimal of circumstances.
Well, it's interesting that you've triggered my thoughts off now, because I took part in a conference a little while ago where nature recovery was being discussed, and I was listening to speaker after speaker, really giving quite complicated lectures about how we need to do things. And here you have a picture right in front of us. You can see the Oxford ragwort there, but if you actually look on the verge where the double yellow lines are, there's plants growing in there. Now, these two environments are incredibly hostile. And I think, let's be honest, that if we gave nature a little bit of space and chance, it would be like lighting the blue touch paper on a firework. You see what happens here. You listen to your perfect description of what goes on in your garden. Exactly the same. Give it a little chance and it will recover itself. It can do it itself. And that's the point, is that very often when we talk about recovery, we're talking about basically us interfering far too much within that recovery. And if let's imagine we all disappeared from Portishead tomorrow, imagine what it would be like in 2 years, these roads. It would be reclaimed by nature very fast.
Yep. Here's a plant that I get pops up in my garden quite spontaneously, and it's always welcome, and that's red valerian. And this is one that I do believe that's a peacock on there, isn't it, Chris?
No, it's not. It's a painted lady.
Painted lady. Painted lady. Oh.
That's a painted lady. It's a picture. It's a picture I took at the top of the road where I live. So this was basically coming out from the edge of the path next to a garden. So, and again, one of the things that was kept cropping up today is whether these plants impede normal walking. Well, it would be a hell of a size of a red valerian to trip you up. And they tend to grow up relatively straight. And that's where I was saying, where we can have a little bit of common sense. If it's not interfering, if it's not breaking up a wall, if it's not breaking up tarmac or concrete, do we really need to remove it? Do we really need to spend council taxpayers' money on removing? Or could we in fact leave it for species like this painted lady, butterfly? Let's remember, it's a butterfly which has traveled all the way from North Africa to be with us.
Yep. No, absolutely. And what do we have here, Chris?
This is garlic mustard. And again, if it's growing out of your wall, it's going to cause you a problem and you've got to deal with it. And again, it's fairly light into the soil, so you can probably remove the entire thing. This is a picture I took near to Northwestern Cemetery. So, and again, it's on the path. Behind there is the wall of the cemetery, so it's actually on the path edge. But it's interesting how we look at these plants. We think of them as evil, as something horrible. The name weed it's an awful word if you think about it. It's a bit like whoever came up with the name of an animal called a rat. I mean, just the name rat conjures up all sorts of images, and weed conjures up all sorts of images there. This is garlic mustard. Did you know, folks, every part of this plant can be consumed? And if you take one of those leaves on there and rub it in your hands and then smell, you'll smell a little bit of garlic and a little bit of mustard. So, and before you do consume it, I would advise you wash it if it's near a road. Very, very important. And do go online. There's many, many, many websites which actually give some fantastic information about a lot of these plants and about their medicinal usage, and of course how to prepare them for food. So the leaves can be used for salad. The flowers, I'm told, can be eaten. The stems can be eaten. And the bulb itself, if treated in the right way, can be used as an antibiotic. How much of that information have we lost?
Well, well, not me, because I watch a lot of Ray Mears. So,
Okay.
but this, I was going to say, this is certainly closer to home, quite literally.
Yes, this is at my gate, and this really talks about what we do about it. And again, it attracts insects. It had a number of caterpillar moths on it last year. Once the flowering is finished, what we do is we go out and trowel it. So we remove it. We just cut the top off of it completely, and it comes back again next year and puts on a beautiful display. I think it's beautiful. I don't think anybody's going to trip over that. It's not very far out at all. And the flowers don't last very long. The plant grows really, really quickly, doesn't last long, does its business, and then it's gone. And basically, what we do is manage that as such. And here's a much better outcrop. This is gorgeous. Isn't this gorgeous? You know, if every sign had that on it, that's pretty astounding. And again, this is dealt with locally. So once it's finished flowering, it's removed. It's troweled and removed. And this is the point, I think, which came out very strongly today. It's kind of like we're going to get to a time where we've reduced the amount of chemicals that we're using to such an extent that we can then think about doing stuff that we did when I was a kid, and that was you used to go out with your mum and dad outside your house, and you used to trowel the weeds. You just used to remove them, and maybe we've entered an era where we expect the council to do everything, and you know, maybe we need to take a step back to what. For instance, certainly my mum and dad would do, and it was interesting today when people were talking about snow. I can remember that if we had snow, that we had to go and clear not just our path to get down to the main path itself. We had to clear the path to the neighbour's line. It was accepted that you had to do it, and obviously, I think we've got too soft. I think we expect councils to do absolutely everything. I would far rather that councils spent their money on human needs than needs like this. And what we need is a bit of community action, a bit like the wonderful Turn the Tide in Portishead, what they do with litter. The same thing. Yeah, the same thing with weeds. And it can be done. It could be done through the same organisation, but they will need a lot of help to do it. And it should be something that's led the way by Portishead Town Council.
No, absolutely. I'm just having a quick look through my photographs here to see if I can find the. It was a picture that I took just before Christmas. No, I can't find it. We'll move on. We'll talk about this another time. But it was some poppies that were growing on on some steps. Absolutely fabulous sight. And one of your favourite insects, isn't it?
Oh yeah, this is the yellow-legged mining bee. They're all about to. Some of them are out already, and basically that's a common daisy flower. So I think everybody that's watching this, have we got anybody watching this?
We have got. We do. We've got people watching, Chris.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, the common daisy, you'll know the size of it. It's incredibly small, and so that just illustrates how much smaller the yellow-legged mining bee is. And they're beginning to get active now. Some of them are already out and about, and you'll see as the days begin to warm up. If you walk round the Gordeno School verge, so looking to the flower show field, turn around, look back at the verge there, and this is where a lot of them are actually living. And when they first come out, obviously the air temperature, as you know yourself from this week, is quite cold. So they're active now. And what they need is flowering plants to be low to the ground, because the higher up they go, the more energy they burn and the colder it gets. So as I said today, you know, the council do plant some wonderful daffodils, but those daffodils are far too high for these bees. Even a lot of bumblebees that are getting active now will still be operating low across the ground. So they need these plants. They need this one. And of course, they'll need things like dandelions to get going. And so it's really great that these two plants are available now, if you like. They're getting going now, ready for the bees to come out. But yellow-legged mining bee has two aggregations. One is now, and then basically what happens, they lay the eggs ready for the second aggregation, which comes in May. And that aggregation needs the first aggregation to be successful. So again, we need to provide, make sure that plants like this are available for it. So if we're spraying the edges, for example, of paths, a lot of these bees are going to get affected by that. So, and a lot of these daisies will succumb and die. So, and again, this is a way in which we can help local nature recovery to affect this. And don't forget, there's a Somerset link here, because the second aggregation of yellow-legged mining bees actually flies much higher. And we know that they do pollinate fruit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's not just when we're talking about the use of weed killers. It's not just insects that it impacts on, because we've got our lizard friends, our reptiles and lizards. And tell us about that, Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, it's the same thing as with the bees, and that is that, again, if what I've seen spraying in Portishead before, it's been basically what was described today as mist spraying. So it's fly literally walking down the road, and it's like a mist coming out. And that's indiscriminate. That's going everywhere. So you get a bit of wind behind that, and that's going to go right into these grass verges. What's likely to be hiding in those grass verges could be things like frogs. It can be, next picture.
Oh, yeah.
Newts. And for example, we know that the newts that are currently in my pond, they have probably come from the local field, and they've got to come across some of those areas that potentially could be sprayed. I'm saying potentially because we haven't had them sprayed for some time now, which is really good news. So again, this is where we can help species like this, who also help us, because if we are proud gardeners, these animals, the frog and the newt, basically will eat a lot of the nasties that eat your produce.
No, absolutely. And it comes back to that. It comes back to that thing of being a part of nature rather than being apart from nature, and working with nature as opposed to working against it. And there are so many, like you say, is if you've got a healthy frog population in your pond, they are going to be doing so much clearing up of other things that could be eating your aspidistras or whatever. We've just got to educate ourselves, haven't we, Chris?
We've got to realise that it's no joke. For example, when we talk about climate change, it's no joke when people, like some of the top scientists, turn around and say, "Look at nature for solutions." It's cheap. How much do you have to pay for it? It's nature doesn't cost the earth, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Absolutely. I believe you have been contributing to a book which will be coming out towards the middle part of the year.
Yes, due for release in August. Yes, Great Misconceptions. Yes, this is something that came up with this idea with Ian Parsons, who's a great friend to this program, about doing this. And Ian, of course, has done a magnificent job as the main man again. And there are many different contributors to this, but basically it looks at well, I'm not no spoilers alert. All right, I'm going to give it away, and I'm not doing that. Look, if anybody's interested in the book and they want a flyer, let me know. It's available for pre-order now, and it comes out in August. But yes, I've written a chapter in it.
Yeah, you've written a chapter titled "Shh, let's create rewilding project. Let's create a rewilding project, but don't tell anyone." I like that.
Enough said, mate.
Yeah, well, exactly. It does look like a fabulous book, and I shall certainly be ordering some copies for friends of mine, because it looks like it's going to be a terrific read and an educational read as well, because I, like you say, there are so many misconceptions about rewilding, and working with nature, and we've without raking over old coals, we've experienced that locally in the last few years, of just the frustrations of trying to convince people that there is another way of doing things. But yeah, looking forward to that, Chris. I'm looking forward to reading your contribution. I see that there are also contributions in the book from Natalie Bennett and Mark Avery as well. Excellent.
Yeah, there's some pretty powerful people in there, of which I'm one, of course.
Yes. Just very, very quickly, because we have overrun a little bit, a teeny weeny bit, but that's no problem at all. I've got to say that whilst I was on walkabout this week, I had the opportunity to pop down and visit the Willow Community Gardens, which is right by the health centre. And if you want to pop over to their website and have a kind of look at what they're doing, it's utterly brilliant, Chris. I know that I know from conversations we've had with Lindsay Smith over the last few years about what she wanted to do with this. But this because of obviously, being out of action last year, this was the first opportunity I had to really have a look at it and have a chat with Lindsay and some of the other volunteers there. This is absolutely fabulous. What they're doing here is that they are they're planting oh goodness me, I think it's willow, but they're underplanting it with native flowers and other plants, and it's recreating that kind of woodland experience, which honestly, I was so blown away by what they're doing down here.
Yeah, absolutely excellent. And if there's sufficient willow within that hedge, then obviously what the willow tree will do is it provides a vast array of flower, of which needs pollinating, but also the willow needs to keep moist. So you see the rain that we've had recently. If we had woodlands full of willow on some of our low-lying areas, they would be doing us a service. But at the same time, they produce a lovely, beautiful canopy in the summer, which is quite shading. So there you can see one of the willows there. And if, for example, we're going to get more extremes of temperature, so for instance, past the 30 degrees C mark during the summer, species like willow, goat willow in particular, are going to be absolutely needed to give us some shade, 10 degrees cooler at least, away from the blaring sun, so to speak. And it seems weird talking about blaring sun when we've been under 100% cloud cover for months. But yeah, this crazy weather can go anywhere at the moment. And yeah, we are extremely wet, which obviously trees will help us with as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't you think, Jonathan, though, we talked about Lindsay there, but from the beginning of the conversation, from the beginning of this show, how much more we're becoming an influencing things which are happening. And I think that's absolutely tremendous. We don't do it to help Jonathan and Chris. We do it to help the wildlife and the people that are out there. I'm very much focused in my professional capacity as thinking about people and wildlife and people. I don't care which way around it goes, though. You cannot divorce the two. They're absolutely essential to one another. And I think I think especially after today, my my eyebrows are certainly raised, and
Mm.
thanks to Councillor Bridger for inviting us along,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, on a number of things now, we're beginning to see ways forward. They may not happen very quick, but they are happening.
Yep. I think that was the thing that really impressed me today. Was it was such a measured, reasoned debate that was taking place, and despite the fact that you had people there from different political persuasions and different political parties, everybody was trying to work out a way of moving forward. And I think that was the encouraging thing. That was the thing that I came out of there really quite impressed with that. So,
and nothing was off the table. Nothing was off the table. Everything was on the table.
Yep, absolutely. Chris, I'm afraid we've run out of time. We've not only have we run out of time, we've actually overrun by 10 minutes, but never mind. This is why we do this. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll do another live show in a month's time, because in a month's time, nature will have moved on considerably, won't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And basic message for anybody out there interested in the work that we do locally: please, please, please get involved.
Mm. And also, just to say that because we are coming up to bird breeding season in the next, by the time we do our next show, Chris, bird breeding season will have started. So, what is your advice for what people may be doing in their own gardens?
If you have to cut something, for goodness sake, check. For goodness sake, make sure there's no birds breeding in there. For some species, even garden species, we are talking about, as I said already in this program, one breeding season away from complete collapse. So that basically means a lot of those small birds, they don't live very long. The thing they need to do is breed. The thing they need to do is have offspring. If we are going out, not deliberately, but even by accident, take time to look, give them the opportunity, give them the chance to have their young. And if they fail themselves because of a reason, chances are they'll turn around and do it again. But if we destroy the base for which they've nested in, they won't have the opportunity to do it again. So it's giving opportunity. And as I've said earlier, you know, nature can be incredibly exciting. It can really bounce back. I'm a great believer in the fact that all of our issues are solvable. They are solvable, and they're not you don't have to solve them by saying, well, we'll just chuck a couple of million quid at it. You know, you can actually sit back, sit around a table, sort things out, and find out what our priorities are with it and how we progress with it. So
Absolutely.
part with nature, not away from it. Because as I've always said, the moment we detach from nature completely, it's the end of us as a species.
Absolutely. And on that note, I want to say a big thank you to Chris for joining us today. And also, not often we say this, Chris, big thank you to North Somerset Council for inviting us and for the meeting today. It was very informative.
I think that's unfair, Jonathan. We praise them every time they do something that's really good and progressive.
Absolutely.
And we do it every single time. So, you know, and full marks today. Thoroughly enjoyable.
Absolutely. On that note, hopefully we'll be back in a month's time, and like I say, hopefully we'll have lots of nature stuff to talk about in a month's time. So until then, as always, get out there and enjoy it, folks. It's honestly, I can tell you from personal experience from the last kind of 8 months since I went into hospital and had the operation and everything, is the part nature has played in my ongoing recovery. It has been absolutely marvelous. And it's even just not stupid, but things like just making a cup of tea, looking out the window and seeing the birds that are on the feeders. So if you haven't got feeders in your garden, pop down the shops, get some feeders, get some food. have a look, see what comes into your garden. Just little things like that. Anyway, on that note, Chris, I'll hopefully see you soon. Thank you for today. Everybody who's tuned in today, thank you very much. Fingers crossed, we'll see you in a month's time. So until then, bye for now.
Bye-bye.